When a child is languishing in foster care, let me just tell you, having been, well, I was in foster care for a very short time, but I have siblings who were in foster care for years. The last thing that is on their mind is that they want a mom or dad, or mom and dad, who look just like them.
Now, before we jumped on, we were talking about critical race theory in the adoption world. And I know it's coming in. I know that it's been there for a while. We've had quite a few conversations, like phone conversations with people who are struggling to move forward in adoption. What do you think the effects are? Like I said, kind of what I think, but what do you think the effects of critical race theory are in the adoption world?
Disastrous. They are disastrous. We're actually going from a place where we were looking at vulnerable children, regardless of their hue, regardless of their background, who needed permanence, who needed love. And that's why, for instance, in 1994, because of the reality that Black and brown children were lingering in foster care longer because there simply weren't enough Black individuals or couples available to adopt. And of course, we need to increase recruiting, absolutely. But because of that, the Multi-Ethnic Placement Act was passed, and it barred using race, putting that in quotes because we're all one human race, but it barred using race as a factor in considering placement. And that's really important because when a child is languishing in foster care, let me just tell you, having been, well, I was in foster care for a very short time, but I have siblings who were in foster care for years. The last thing that is on their mind is that they want a mom or dad, or mom and dad, who look just like them. They want someone to love them. They want someone to care about them, to see their worth. They just want to be loved, period. Culture, we place so much emphasis on culture, and that's what critical race theory does. It's culture is everything, color is everything, and it's bogus, and it's detrimental to the very children that they're claiming to want to help. In the case in point of critical race theory spreading like a cancer into the adoption movement is Bethany Christian Services. Bethany Christian Services, a once great evangelical organization. I used to serve on their board and a local chapter in Virginia Beach and in Atlanta. They have now gone full woke on all of this. And I even hate using that word woke because it is just blindness. It's absolute blindness because they're talking about equity and they're talking about, diversity and inclusion and all this and apologizing. That's what they're doing. They're on this apology tour for how wrong it's been to place Black and brown children with white parents. What? See, this is the same organization, by the way. This is how CRT has damaged the adoption movement for those who've embraced it. Bethany Christian Services is perfectly fine as of March 2021, perfectly fine with placing vulnerable children in same-sex homes. But don't worry, they think it's dangerous to place Black and brown children in white homes. What kind of there's nothing biblical. And they say, and we're still being steadfast. We're still strongly evangelical. Well, I don't know which scripture they're referring to, but that to me just shows the absolute brokenness of critical race theory. And they actually they say they just want to change the Multi-Placement Act, but what they want to change is they really just want to repeal it because they don't believe that race should be eliminated as a factor. They think it should be a main factor in placing children in homes.
Wow. And see, what I don't think a lot of people understand, at least when I was working in foster care and group homes and things like that, the statistic was that Black and brown people generally didn't do foster care. That wasn't our thing. Now, would we do kinship care? Yes. So but kinship care is usually under emergency circumstances. So now, and let me give a little bit of the difference. And you are definitely the expert, so let me know if I'm wrong. But out here in California, what happens is that I get trained to do foster care. I get trained to have a child placed in my home. But under kinship care, the kid has been removed from the birth parents, the nuclear family. The first look isn't to put them in the system. The first look is to put them with family. So if there is an aunt or uncle, grandparent, something like that, they'll put them with that person. That's kinship care, which is different than foster care. But by and large, we aren't doing foster care. We're not going out creating a lot of space in our home and saying, hey, I got this extra bedroom, let me go get a child. It's normally under emergency circumstances. And so when you look at kinship care versus foster care, you do have a lot more kids who are staying in the foster care system when social workers or placement advocates and things like that are saying, well, this child needs to be placed with a Black or brown person because they're Black or brown.
Maybe, Ryan, you can talk to us about the Christian idea of adoption and why so many Christians care about this issue.
Because it's the essence of salvation. Adoption is the essence of salvation. And for Christians, adoption shouldn't be second nature. It should actually be first nature. And we have great examples. People typically go to the example of Moses, but I find it interesting. They don't actually go to the example of Christ. Because here you had Joseph, who obviously was not biologically related to the Messiah, but yet he chose to take care of him and love him as his son. I mean, he could have chosen to leave, but he chose to love instead. He could have chosen, abandonment, but he chose adoption instead. And so we have such a powerful example. God designed our rescue and our redemption through adoption. Ephesians 1:5. He predestined us to adoption through his to sonship through Jesus Christ. There's a reason why adoption is used even throughout Scripture, because the authors understood what adoption meant. When you were adopted, especially in Roman culture, you were adopted, you could no longer, that tie could not be severed. Your inheritance was permanent. And so we as Christians have so many misconceptions and misperceptions about adoption, and always thinking it as second best or even lower down the list, and not understanding that it is a viable and an equal option to a biological parent choosing to parent his or her child. But it's often seen as something that is shameful and something that is disgraceful. In fact, I will tell you, my wife and I spoke at a marriage conference, and one of the sponsoring organizations, the Christian organization, I won't mention the name, but the leader of that organization said, we're really concerned about the keynote speakers. We're concerned about the fact that they're really emphasizing adoption. Well, adoption's not biblical. And I'm like, have you read the Bible?
Yes.
There is no salvation without adoption. Of course it's biblical, but too many Christians just have, even today, people will talk, will ask me about adoption, and then they'll say, well, is this a hard thing to talk about? Because they think it's shrouded in shame. Like, I'm ecstatic that I was adopted. And I understand it comes out of brokenness, yes. But in the natural and the supernatural, adoption brings healing and restoration. And it's a process. It's not all like happiness and parties. I understand that. I know that. I lived it. But it is a journey toward healing. And it is such a powerful act of love on the birth parents' part, and of course, the adoptive family's part.